All right, so get ready. We're going deep into the new Wolfman movie. The one coming out January 17th.
Yeah.
And I know you guys out there are hungry for details.
Hmm.
Well, luckily, we've got a whole stack of early reactions from people who've actually seen it.
Ooh, very interesting.
And, I think it'd be interesting to see, especially for you, if it lives up to all the hype.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how it turns out.
Well, you remember how we were talking about the monster design
Uh-huh.
after they revealed it at Halloween Horror Nights?
Right, with the more goblin look.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of fans weren't so happy about it.
Some people were a little skeptical.
But the good thing is, none of these early reactions seem to mention that at all.
Yeah, it seems like that initial glimpse, might have just been a little misleading.
Yeah. It's interesting because the Screen Rant even says that the werewolf is, quote, 100% practical effects.
Oh, wow. See, for me, that's a huge plus. Practical effects, they just have a way of capturing that real visceral horror.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of horror, the word that seems to keep popping up in these early reactions is emotional. Not just scary, but like emotionally resonant.
Okay, interesting.
Like, for example, Tessa Smith.
Yeah.
She specifically mentioned both jumping scares and tears.
Oh, wow. That is fascinating. What do you think would be so emotional about a werewolf story? Especially considering all those, classic monster movie tropes.
Yeah. It really makes you wonder what kind of story they've put together.
Mm.
And actually, there's a lot of buzz about Christopher Abbott's performance.
Oh, yeah?
Some people are even saying it could be like a breakout role for him. Have you seen any of his other work?
Yeah, he's done some great stuff. He's really talented. I'm really interested to see how he handles, the whole man-beast thing, especially with, like you said, all the focus on the emotional side of the film.
Yeah, definitely. And, the Screen Rant also pointed out that Leigh Whannell, he has a pretty good track record with these kinds of movies, especially, with Upgrade and The Invisible Man.
Oh, absolutely. Both of those movies were fantastic. They took those, kind of familiar concepts and made them feel fresh and scary again. So I can definitely see why people are excited to see what he does with Wolfman, bringing something unique to it.
Yeah, for sure. And here's something interesting. Screen Rant also mentioned that Wolfman might have had a bit of a limited budget.
Okay.
Because of, the story seems pretty contained and the cast is smaller.
Do you think that could actually be a good thing for the movie? Sometimes those limitations can actually force filmmakers to get more creative.
Oh, for sure.
Instead of relying on, big explosions and CGI, they have to focus more on the characters, the atmosphere, the suspense, that slow burn stuff that really gets under your skin.
Yeah.
It can be really effective.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly.
And maybe, in this case, having a smaller budget will actually make the movie even better, more intense.
Yeah, it could definitely lead to a more focused, kind of a tighter experience.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, and I almost forgot. You mentioned one of the reactions mentioned generational guilt as a theme.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's not something you see every day in a werewolf movie, is it?
Not really. And that's what makes this one, really intriguing. It's taking those classic horror elements, but adding something more, something deeper, something that, speaks to real human anxieties.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you think that theme, the generational guilt thing, might actually play out? Especially in a werewolf story. I mean, could it be that the curse itself, is tied to this idea of inherited guilt?
That's a great question. I mean, is it a literal curse, passed down through bloodlines?
Like a family secret.
Exactly. A family secret you can't escape. Or maybe it's more metaphorical. Like it represents inherited trauma. All those burdens we carry from previous generations.
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
It is.
It really adds a whole new layer to, the whole beast within thing.
Yeah.
It's not just a physical transformation, but also a psychological one too.
Exactly. And if you think about the idea of, a contained story like we were talking about before, maybe it's set in a remote cabin or an old family estate, that claustrophobia could play a big part too. Imagine you're not just trapped with a monster, but also with the weight of your family's dark history.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
Yeah.
Okay, so to recap, we have positive early reactions pointing to a movie that's both scary and emotional. We've got a potentially groundbreaking monster design brought to life with, practical effects. A talented director, Leigh Whannell, who has a really impressive track record, a strong cast, and thought-provoking themes that go beyond just the usual werewolf stuff.
Yeah.
What's not to be excited about?
It does sound pretty promising, but, we do have to remember these are just like initial reactions from early screenings.
Of course, of course.
We'll have to see what happens when it's released, to the general public, how they respond.
Right. But it's definitely a good sign that the people who've seen it are so enthusiastic. It feels like more than just hype. It feels like there's something really special about this movie.
I agree. And I think all this buzz around Wolfman, it also says something about what's happening in horror movies in general lately.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, there seems to be this shift away from just pure, visceral scares.
Oh, okay.
Towards stories that explore deeper themes and anxieties, like the stuff we've been talking about.
Interesting.
Filmmakers are using horror to look at social issues, trauma, the complexities of human nature.
So you're saying Wolfman fits into that trend?
I think so, yeah. It's not just about a monster, it's about something more.
Right, right. Like you said, the generational guilt, the family dynamics, the focus on the emotional side of things. It sounds like Wolfman is trying to do more than just, make us jump.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what a lot of horror fans want these days. We want to be entertained, but we also want to be, challenged, engaged on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why these early reactions are so exciting. It seems like Wolfman has the potential to be both thrilling and thought-provoking, a real cinematic experience.
Definitely. Okay, so let's take a moment to just kind of sum up what we've talked about. We've looked at the early reactions, the buzz surrounding Wolfman, and it's overwhelmingly positive.
Right.
People are praising the monster, the emotional impact of the story, the performances, and the director's vision.
And it's pretty impressive that all this seems to have been achieved, despite maybe having a limited budget. It sounds like Whannell really made the most of what he had to work with, told a compelling and terrifying story without relying too much on, CGI or anything like that.
Absolutely. So before we wrap things up completely, what about you? What stands out to you the most from all these reactions? What are you most excited to see?
That's a good question. I have to say, I'm really intrigued by how this film, seems to blend horror with real emotional depth. The fact that people are talking about both jumping scares and tears, that's pretty unique, I'm really curious to see how Whannell pulls that off, how he balances those two elements.
Yeah, I get that. For me, it's definitely the whole generational guilt thing. I'm really hooked on that. I can't wait to see how it connects the whole werewolf mythology, how it affects the characters, their relationships. Will it give us a new way of looking at what it means to be cursed? It's like we're going to get a monster movie, with some real depth to it, something that'll really stay with you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Those are the best ones, the ones that make you think. And it's really cool that we're seeing this with a classic universal monster. These creatures, they've been around for so long. They've been captivating audiences for a century?
I know, right?
There's just something timeless about them, don't you think?
Absolutely. And it's great to see, filmmakers like Leigh Whannell finding new ways to bring these monsters to life for a modern audience.
Right.
It just goes to show, these monsters, they still have that power to scare us, to fascinate us.
But like we were saying earlier, it's not just about the scares anymore.
Right.
These new movies, these new interpretations, they're doing more. They're exploring these deeper themes, and they're connecting with us on a much deeper level.
Yeah.
It's about using those iconic monsters as a way to, to understand ourselves and the world around us.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to our own fears, our own anxieties.
Yeah.
We're not just watching a monster on screen. We're confronting something inside ourselves.
That's a great way to put it. And in the case of Wolfman, it seems like those themes of, the generational guilt, the family secrets, all that's going to play a big part.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see how the film explores that tension, between our past and our present, and how it ultimately shapes the characters' fates.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Okay, so before we wrap up, we always like to leave you with, something to think about, a final thought-provoking question. And this time, it's this. How do you think these themes of inherited guilt and family secrets, how do they play out in a werewolf story? Could the curse itself be, a metaphor for the burdens that we carry from previous generations? Or could the transformation itself be a manifestation of, repressed emotions?
Oh, that's a really great question. And I think ultimately those are questions that each viewer is going to have to answer for themselves.
Exactly. That's what's so cool about, a deep dive like this.
Yeah.
We've explored the early buzz, we've unpacked all the details, and hopefully we've gotten you even more excited to see Wolfman for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got all the information now to form your own opinions.
So mark those calendars. January 17th, Wolfman is hitting theaters.
And hey, who knows? Maybe you'll even come up with some new insights
Yeah.
that we didn't even talk about here.
Right. And be sure to let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And we're always up for another deep dive into the world of horror.
Always.
So stay tuned for more spine-tingling discussions. Until then, happy viewing.